Okay, good morning, everybody. Do you want me to use the mic or you just want me to shout? Is the mic overkill? Okay, we're gonna go with mic. Awesome. My name is Lauren Proehl. I know that's like very hard to tell. I'm a dark and shadowy figure up here because I decided to use a white background presentation, and I'm realizing the error of my ways. But today we're gonna be talking about the anatomy of a threat hunting hypothesis. This is my last speaking engagement on my speaking engagement tour of the Midwest. So I was at Blue Team Con and GurCon. I'm very, very happy to be ending here in Iowa today. I've given this talk in like 45-minute formats and 30-minute formats. So an hour is going to be a stretch. What I would say is think about questions. Let's have a discussion. I love very hot takes on threat hunting. So I'll leave about 15, 10 minutes at the end of this and we can chat more. Super open to any off-the-wall question you have. Just so we can like set the tone before we get started. This talk is for people who've never threat hunted before and people who have threat hunted. Hopefully there's lessons learned for everyone in this that you can take away and apply to your world. So who am I? Why should you listen to me? Why am I even talking here today? I'm a director of global cyber defense at Marsh McLennan. It's a very, very fancy title that means I make budgets and spreadsheets and PowerPoints. But also that I lead 5 blue teams at Marsh McLennan. This is the largest company you never heard of. We're the largest insurance broker in the world. So if your company needs insurance, come to us. We'll say we're going to go negotiate with health insurers on your behalf. That's the gist. There's a lot more stuff we do, but that's what people know us for. I've done a lot of blue team work as a practitioner. I've also led a lot of blue team work. I started as a SOC analyst #1 at a services company, worked my way up to leading the SOC, jumped over to CenturyLink, did IR for them, led their IR team, then started their first internal threat hunting program. So I've been around the block a few times in my relatively short career. Ironically, this weekend is also B-Sides KC, and I sit on their CFP review board, but I picked you all because I was better. I actually have the memory of a goldfish, but I'm very, very happy to be here. If you all are considering and they don't fall on the same time next year, I would highly recommend getting down to B-Sides KC. We've got a great group of folks down there. They're a pretty good party, if I do say myself. I'm normally in charge of it. And then SecKC, the largest InfoSec meetup that happens monthly down in Kansas City. We would love to have you there. We're always looking for new speakers. We're a very friendly crowd. We will buy you drinks. If you don't want drinks, we'll buy you barbecue. So please come on down. And then Fuzzy Snuggly Duck, if you know, you know. When I'm not doing a whole bunch of other stuff at work, I'm also getting my master's in cybersecurity policy at Georgia Tech. There have been a lot of people interested in that, so I'm happy to chat about that. And then I try to escape computers by running long distances in the woods, and so far it isn't working because I'm here talking to you today. I ran 32 miles in a race in April, and still the consistent dread of where technology is going chased me throughout the trails. So I'll keep you posted on whether or not that works. Also tell really bad jokes. Don't feel like you have to laugh, but if you do, thanks. It's a boost for me. So what's on the agenda today? We are at the introduction. We are here. We're going to set a few more tone slides up. Then we're going to get into the meat of this, which is hypothesis diagramming. This is hopefully will help you make better threat hunt hypotheses. We'll talk about impact multipliers for your threat hunts and for threat hunting at your organization or in general. And then I'll give you a whole bunch of resources. One thing that I do want to say, these slides are on GitHub, so if you miss something or go too fast, I don't think we're at too much risk of that because we've got a nice long hour together. But I will give you links to everything at the end today, so you'll be able to go and grab that later. Okay, so my friend Joe Slowick has this really amazing quote about what threat hunting is. And there's a lot of misconceptions about what threat hunting is or isn't. And it's not always right or wrong. Threat hunting can be fit to form where your organization is at maturity-wise. But today we're going to be talking about threat hunting with this definition. A human-driven process to identify artifacts associated with a previously undetected intrusion or breach that was not identified by existing security controls. And the key here is previously undetected, right? There's a lot of organizations I see that do threat hunting that will be going and looking at alerts that maybe your SOC didn't look at, or going and looking at IOC matches. And that's okay. That's a really like first step getting into the threat hunting world. But as you progress and as you mature, either as a practitioner in threat hunting or as you build a threat hunting program, you want to be looking for the unknown unknowns. I've got a whole other talk on that. If you want to talk about like what categorizes, you can come in if you want. Okay. This is really chill. Like, if you want to come in, if you need a bathroom break, that's fine. I don't care. Um, if you want to talk about what constitutes an unknown unknown after the talk, let's chat about it. There's some confusion on that, but really what you're looking for is stuff that your tools missed, but is detectable. And how you quantify detectable is there's an artifact left in one of your tools or on your systems that you can make something out of it. You can make it known for the next time the behavior happens. Okay, so welcome back to elementary school. We've got the early start time this morning, so we're on the right track. I hope you all came ready to learn. This is hypothesis diagramming. This is a method that I derived based on sentence diagramming from 3rd grade. So this could be like 2nd to 4th grade, I guess, depending on where you went to school. And this is to help you make better hypotheses. This is, oh yeah, we do need the mic. Okay. This is tried and tested, so I've used this several different times at many different programs. And this helps analysts kind of direct their train of thought. So the whole hope is that it's going to make making threat hunting hypotheses easier. So you deserve better hypotheses. They should work for you. You should not work to try to do so much to fit it into the hypothesis, right? One common thing that I see when you are first starting out threat hunting is hunters will be like, well, I want to hunt APT28. Okay, all right, so APT28 has like 150 TTPs that go into their attack toolchain, right? That's going to take you 4 years to try to threat hunt, all of that. So let's break it down a little bit further, and this is what this method does. It helps you take good inputs in order to give you good outputs. When you're building a hunt and doing a hunt, I always say it's kind of like walking on a cliff at night and like trying to find the edge without like accidentally falling off. And if you build too much freedom into your hunt hypothesis, you're going to be literally walking in pitch black. There's nothing there. Hi there. Am I too loud? Okay. I'm just going to keep addressing people and making them feel awkward. I hope y'all don't mind. If you give someone too much freedom in their hunt hypothesis, you're going to be walking in pitch black. They're not going to see anything. There's no moonlight. You're literally asking them for a blind trust. And I don't know about you, but I'm not a blind trust gal. Trust but verify, right? And if you give them too little freedom, you put a giant light up neon blinking sign that says this is where the end is, and you got spotlights on everything, and you take kind of some of the adrenaline out of it. So we want to give them a happy middle, right? Put some walls up so they don't fall off the cliff, but make sure there's a full moon out. Make sure that they can walk up to there, discover things on their own, but not fall off and not be unsafe. Also, if you want a less morbid anecdote, you can always say it's like bumpers at a bowling alley, right? So, you know, everyone likes to be like, oh, I can throw a strike without a bumper. That's cool, but sometimes I want to throw it between my legs and backwards and still get a strike. And so this is what this method hopes to help you do. It'll give you a method to getting some points no matter what way you throw it. It'll keep you on track and hopefully make it a little bit better time for you. So when you're building a good hypothesis, I found that you want 4 consistent elements, one of which is optional. So you want target, you want technique, you want payload or action and objective. This depends on what you call this in your organization. And then sometimes you want attacker type, and we'll talk about when you want attacker type, when it makes sense. Don't get ahead of yourself and be like, oh, I'm going to go hunt APT28. We're going to talk specifically about APT28. Okay, so what makes a target, and this is not the retail giant, right, as much as I love them, excuse me, and half my paycheck goes to them. In this case, a target is actually the system, application, person, or victim of malicious behavior that you're hunting. And you can shorten this down to victim. And the reason why I put all of these explanations up there is because oftentimes people will only hunt like a computer. And when you're threat hunting, there's a wide range of attacks that can happen in your organization. Look at Scattered Spider, that's ticking up right now, right? That's a lot of social engineering. There are social engineering threat hunts that you can do to help protect your organization, so don't rule those out. Generally, you're looking at computers, though. Let's be real, right? We all have an EDR. We all love that. You're going to be kind of living and breathing in there. When you pick your target, it helps you set the tone of severity for your hunt. This is important because you have to prioritize hunts. You're going to dream up a million ideas after this. I know it. I'm giving you like 20 in here, right? So beg, borrow, steal, make them your own, or don't. It's up to you. But when you have so many threat hunts, you have to hunt the things that are most impactful to your organization and are highest priority first. So if you get a hunt and you say, I'm going to go hunt the CEO's inbox, I would hope that hunt comes before your CISO's inbox hunt or before a random web developer's email inbox hunt. Similarly, if you have 0 Windows 7 hosts in your environment and Windows 2016 is a standard server build out for you, I'd hope that a Windows 7 host hunt, based hunt, is more of a priority for you. And similarly, a production finance application, right, should be more impactful and more meaningful to hunt than a development web application that's only internal facing, right? So there's tons of different examples here. This is kind of tailored to your organization though. What makes sense? If you have Macs only, doing a Windows hunt is probably not going to be beneficial for you. So you want to prioritize based on what you see in your everyday life. This also will shortcut the scope of logs that you should be searching. If you're going and you are hunting the CEO's inbox, you probably don't need to be looking at firewall logs, right? So the more you detail in your hypothesis, the less work you have for you. Put those bumpers back up, easier to roll a strike, right? So what makes a technique? This is the malicious behavior you want to find. This is traditionally what people only look for in threat hunts. It's someone's key logging me, someone's trying to DDoS me, someone is trying to exfiltrate all my files. When you look at early day threat hunting research and development, it is all about just the technique that you're hunting for. And this is really, really good. You have to have a technique in there, but don't get lost in the sauce in like focusing solely on technique. The context around the technique matters. If you have few ideas for technique or you need more ideas to like get you going, go look on MITRE ATT&CK. They've kept me in a job for like the last 5 years. I love them. They put so much out there. They even put how to detect things so you can know what logs to go look for. Like, it's an absolute cheat code. It's an amazing resource both for attackers and for defenders. Just go and click a random technique. So I went and clicked on T1570. This is lateral tool transfer. When you go there, it's talking about like, yeah, attackers will get in your environment and then transfer their tools all around the environment. There are literally 40 hunt examples on this page alone. I picked one. This is moving malicious files between compromised hosts using SMB, but they also talk about FTP. They also talk about SSH. They also talk about a whole bunch of other file transfer protocols. So you can go in there and just click around, and they will also tell you what actors are doing this, which helps a bunch, especially if you're trying to get money from executives because they only care about China, North Korea, Russia, insert APT group here. Yeah? And then what makes a payload, aka action on objective? This depends again on what you call it. I go with payload. It's a little bit easier for me. But this is the big why. Why is someone doing the technique to your victim? Why is someone doing the bad thing to you? And this is what we're always trying to answer, right? Everybody wants to know why. When somebody steals all your files and extorts you for $20 million, your executives want to know why. And sometimes the answer is they just suck and they want money. But other times there's a deeper reason that you can explore into. The reason you need to do this is you have to make your business people care. Because one thing that always happens in a threat hunt, undoubtedly, is you have hunters who start and they're like, I want to find the next big APT. And they do like 6 hunts and they find nothing. And that's okay. If you find nothing when you're threat hunting, first of all, it's very hard to find nothing. So let me clarify what that means. If you don't find any big bad guys, right, that's okay. I will tell you, I've hunted for 7 years. I've found one big bad guy in my entire time hunting. And that took a lot of work. Generally, what you're going to find is a lot of misconfigurations, a lot of security tool gaps, a lot of areas where you can create new detection logic, policy or process changes, all little things that you can incrementally impact the security posture of your company. So it's not every time that you're going to be like publishing a blog and be like, North Korea's in my POS system, woo, right? That's okay, so keep that in mind. But when you don't find the big bad guy, then your management's like, well, why do I give you people and tools if you're not going to find the big bad guy so I can publish a blog and make money off of you, right? And then you got to be like, well, boss, look, here's the impact of what this behavior could do to us. Here's what we found. We found 40 systems don't have our EDR. Or we found that when you call in to make a wire transfer, nobody asks you to validate your identity. Those are all very real findings that can help prevent an incident and in turn win goodwill from your reactive teams. You just have to make sure you're articulating them. So when we talk about payloads, you can say, yeah, okay, somebody puts malware on the system, but you want to be able to explain that malware can lead to credential theft, or if somebody exfiltrates, that can lead to extortion, or DDoS can lead to lost business, right? You don't have to put this directly into your hypothesis, but you want to be able to articulate it when you complete your hunt about why it matters for what you're hunting. Lastly, this will also help you highlight what success looks like. We have a rule when you're hunting the unknowns. If you find something bad, you stop what you're doing, put your hands on the desk, and then give it over to our IR team. If that is you, because you are splitting your time between hunting and IR, I would encourage you to stop what you're doing, put your hands on the desk, and start an incident response. So when you're defining what a payload is, you're defining what ultimately bad ends up happening. You want to be able to have that defined so that you can say, yeah, this is actually really, really bad, and we need to respond to this ASAP, because we're finding the unknowns. Generally, they've been in there for a while if you do find this. All right, so we're talking about attacker type. I know everyone's like, I'm hunting North Korea, let's go. Shut up, Lauren, let's talk about China. Dope. We are here, but hold up before you start putting this in your hypothesis. I'm begging you. I am begging you, please. Do not just come out guns blazing saying you're going to hunt China. It's going to be a bad time for you. It's going to be a bad time for me because my boss is going to hear about it from your boss. And then we're all going to have bad time. One thing that I would tell you, check your program maturity first. There are organizations that can hunt based on attacker type. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm saying generally you need a team of 4 or more people that are dedicated to threat hunting, that have an advanced incident response team and a SOC team and those processes already in place. You also want to make sure you have all of the resources you need in terms of training, tools, logs, because when you're going and looking for big bad guys, they often roll their own protocols. They're not coming in here and popping in, no, we set off a CrowdStrike alert. Whoops, right? Generally, they are avoiding that because they know, because they've got CrowdStrike on their machine back in Beijing, right? They've already tested it. So they're bypassing a lot of the stuff that you need. If you're new to threat hunting, make sure if you're hunting these, you pair yourself up with someone who's hunted a lot before. A lot of hunters are very willing to share this stuff, right? It's just a different league. And oftentimes it's not necessary, right? If you're at a small mom and pop shop up here in Iowa, you're probably not getting targeted by an APT. I'm sorry to break your hearts, but that's the reality, right? And in fact, most APTs aren't targeting my company because we don't have the goods that they're looking for. This is all relevant to your organization, right? So make sure you understand your threat profile and your threat model. I'm not telling you, you know that better than I do, right? But be in reality about what attackers target you. It's going to make your lives a lot easier. I always recommend focusing on techniques and scale as opposed to an attacker type, because generally what you're going to find is a lot of attackers use the same TTPs. So, okay, you want to go hunt China, cool. Which branch are you going to hunt? Are you going to hunt out of Shanghai? Are you going to hunt Beijing? Are you going to hunt allegedly Taiwan, even though that's not part of China, right? What are you going after? Thank you for the one laugh there. What are you going after? But they use the same TTPs, right? They use the same injects into the web shells. They use the same initial access methods. They use the same programs that communicate back. They use the same C2s, right? So you can actually focus on the techniques and then cast a wider range, a wider net into your attacker groups and have a bigger impact on your organization. This will also help you scale against new attackers that come out because they all get on the stupid forums and talk to each other and love to share their malware and their TTPs and write-ups and I got $30 million from MGM, you should try this one simple trick, right? So as soon as the attackers hear that, they're going to go try that, and probably against you. If you're just focusing on techniques, you're kind of protected in advance by doing that. One thing I'll say, hunting threat actors can garner you rapid support from your leadership. I can't tell you the number of times my CFO has come to me and said, Lauren, I read in the Wall Street Journal about North Korea, and they're going after crypto. What can you do? And I can be like, well, I can do a hunt for North Korea. You're going to need to give me $5 million for my program and 6 more people. And they'll be like, I'll give you 1, and I'll give you 2 people. I'm like, oh, okay, that's great. This is awesome, right? But we can only do that because we've built the foundation. The program's existed for 4 years. We've had success doing technique hunts, and they know the North Korea hunt is only going to be the only hunt we do for 6 months because it's so hyper involved. On the flip side, it can result in false findings in a goose chase. If I didn't think that North Korea targeted us, I'm going to be going and looking for evidence that North Korea targets us, and they just simply don't. And so I'm going to be spinning my wheels and finding things that maybe are North Korea, maybe aren't, and could end up blowing up back in my face. So it's all relevant to your organization. One caveat to this, if you are at a managed services provider, you will have a lot more opportunities to do big bad guy hunts. You just have a lot more data to sift through. There's a lot more fun stuff happening because you're working at larger scales instead of focusing on one company entirely. Okay, so I'm going to give you some ideas for hypotheses, good, better, and best hypotheses, and then we're going to diagram them. I did say that was the meat of this talk after all. So a good hypothesis, PowerShell is being leveraged on endpoints to execute malware in memory. A better hypothesis, attackers are compiling exploits locally on servers or clients to use and are using basic naming schema like exploit.exe. And yes, attackers do this. These are all real. I have found things. So attackers do name things, exploit.exe. Don't count them out, right? And then best hypothesis, the Windows subsystem for Linux, aka the bane of my existence, is being used for malicious scripting purposes and cross-compatibility malware execution by malicious insiders. And if anyone in here is working with an EDR company, please get visibility into WSL. I am begging you. My developers are killing me by running unsigned code in here. Okay, so I diagrammed it. I color-coded it because I've got ADHD, and this helps me focus my attention. I hope this helps you a little bit as well. So with the good hypothesis, the technique is PowerShell, your target's endpoints, and then your payload's executing malware in memory. We're looking at the targets, right? We know it's endpoints, so we're probably looking at EDR. We're probably not looking at firewall logs for malware in memory, right? Not looking at proxy logs, not looking at email logs. We've got a really nice bumper placed here, but it's still a little bit vague, right? What is executing malware, big quotes, in memory? And then what are endpoints? So we want to define those a little bit firmer. When we diagram the better hypothesis, oftentimes what you'll see is technique and payload overlap because they go hand in hand. So in this case, our technique is compiling exploits locally using basic naming schema like exploit.exe. Obviously, the payload is an exploit named exploit.exe. And then your target is servers or clients. So we get a little bit more specific here, make those bumpers a little bit finer, narrow down our scope a little bit more. And then our best hypothesis, the technique is WSL, your payload's malicious scripts or cross-compatibility malware, and your target's the Windows desktop. You're not hunting in Macs, you're not hunting Windows servers, you're focused on your desktop population. And then you're looking at WSL logs and you're looking for malicious scripts or cross-compatibility malware. So we've narrowed things down really, really tightly. The one thing that I'll tell you from your good, better, best, those are all subjective, right, in terms of my program. So you might be like, I think this is the good one, and I think the PowerShell is the best. That's fine, right? If you've got a lot of experience, you may want a wider hypothesis so that you can look more. Totally fine. You can scale it wherever you need. The big key is just having those elements in there to make sure that you're guiding your hypothesis in the right direction. And then just for fun, I gave you an attacker type threat hunt. I told you we'd talk about APT28. So APT28 is your attacker type. They have exfiltrated historic exchange data off backup servers in 1 megabit zip files for state-sponsored espionage purposes. This is a real TTP from APT28. This is also a real TTP from not APT28. So if you do this hunt, you can drop the attacker type and still hunt this, and it is still hyper-relevant to your organization. We see this happening all the time. Obviously, your technique is exfiltrating data in 1 megabit zip files, your target's historic exchange data and backup servers, and then your payload's espionage purposes. And I put a controversial payload in here, because you may never know if APT28 was using this for espionage purposes until you find your widget that you make in an Amazon storefront with a Chinese seller's name. You might not know. And that's okay, right? Sometimes what you have to do is you have to piece together why an attacker is doing something for you. So you want to be on the pulse of cyber threat intelligence so you know what's their motivation. If you don't have the tools to do that or resources to do that, I really recommend you speak with like a Mandiant, CrowdStrike. There's so many other, Microsoft, right? If you've got a retainer with them for your IR, ask to engage their CTI folks and ask like, why would they do this? What's happening? They can usually explain it pretty well. With this one, you can also sub out the zip files. You can say they are naming it .mp4s, because they do name them .mp4s, by the way, or .mp3s or .movs, right? There's a lot of things you can sub in here so that you can have like an infinite number of hunts for a year to keep you busy, and just using this one hypothesis. Okay, so we got through the hypothesis diagramming, and now we're going to get into impact multipliers. The big thing is you want to make your threat hunts matter to your organization. Howdy, welcome in. Hi there. Thanks for responding. You're the first one. I appreciate it. You want to make your threat hunts matter to your organization. And this is key, because I see a lot of analysts who are like, I'm going to go hunt this thing that I saw in Mandiant's blog. Awesome. It's a malware that only hits POS systems in North Korean grocery stores. Okay. Well, we're not North Korea, right? I'm assuming most of you don't work at a grocery store, so maybe that's not as relevant for us. Maybe if you're at Kroger, right, you might want to see what's coming down the pipe to hit you. But taking these 5 different elements, you can really make sure that your threat hunts matter and have impact, and you're guaranteed to find something that you can articulate to your business why you do what you do. Sorry, I'm checking time. So industry, here you want to talk about the type of business that you do, obviously like MMCs in the insurance industry. But you also want to talk about the customers you serve, the suppliers you rely on also. For geolocation, you want to talk about global, national, and regional locations. Your technology stack is what makes your business go. Your crown jewels are very important: people, assets, applications, or processes. And then trends, and this one's a little bit controversial depending on who you talk to. This is what you're seeing from a detection and response perspective. I would say trends are the perfect place to start if you're getting into threat hunting. If something keeps ringing the bell and your SOC keeps responding to it, generally there's going to be something over there that you can poke and prod and say, like, there's something that the tool missed anyway, right? So let's get into the details of these. Consider the threats facing your industry. You're not alone. I encourage you to learn from other people's incidents. This is a lot of stealing from Peter to pay Paul, right? But we're all in this together. Hopefully you're sharing what happens to you with folks in your area. It doesn't have to be formal through like an FSI SAC like we're in. But if you're just like, hey, meet someone at CornCon, you work in Quad Cities too. Have you seen this? Can we set up a threat sharing partnership? Honestly, those informal partnerships are the best way that I've found intelligence, and the way that I've gotten indicators of compromise that have kind of vaccinated us against threats before they get into our environment. There's tons of other sharing resources out there. You can go on Twitter and talk to people. There's tons of Slacks, all kinds of things. If you need ideas for that, please let me know. SecDSM is over in Des Moines. Yeah, there we go. Woo! Go to SecDSM, make friends at SecDSM, talk about what you're seeing, because the threat actors are talking about us. They're talking about how they popped you yesterday, and now they've got $20 million, right? So why don't we turn it on them and start talking to each other and share what we know? Obviously, caveat, talk to your legal team, get all the protections in place. I am not a lawyer. Some people don't like that, but talk to your folks in industry. Also consider your key partnerships and your key clients. We know that supply chain threats are very, very real. Thank you, Target. Still relevant all these years later, right? But look at who is serving your business and who you are serving from a business perspective. Oftentimes, threat actors are going to go after one or both of those because it gets to you somehow. So from a vendor's perspective, right, they might say, I'm going to inject in CCleaner because I want to get into MMC for whatever data MMC has, right? Or they may say, I'm going to go after MMC because of the clients that MMC serves, which is a very, very real thing, especially if you're a large professional services company. Just keep in mind, you're not always the end target, so you might get threats from different areas based on who they're actually going after. So physical location matters as much as your workforce distribution. If you're based only up here in Iowa, you should probably not be hunting things that are happening over in Germany, for example, right? On the flip side, if you're based here in Iowa, but your call center is in India, you definitely want to be looking at threats that impact India, because your workforce distribution's in India and the US. So they're going to go after wherever you have an open laptop, wherever you have an open port, wherever you have an IP address. Doesn't really matter to them, they're going to go after it. And we do know that threat actors will tailor their attacks based on the geolocation that you're in, right? We see a lot of threat actors who will not have their malware execute if your keyboard language is set to Russian, for example, right? Very common thing. So this is why it's important to understand where your workforce is distributed. Again, this example, right? If you're solely operating in Illinois, you probably don't need to be looking at threats impacting Ukraine. It's not going to be a good use of your time. But be aware of what's happening in the world, right? When the Ukrainian conflict was really at its peak and we saw all those wipers coming out and Russia just like throwing the wall at them, right? We were aware of that. We were tracking that. We had it. We said, what can we do about it? Well, we closed down all of our Ukrainian operations because it was too risky. We shut and quarantined off that network, so they were on their own network, and that was the thing. And so we were aware of it. We took proactive measures, and we said we shouldn't see Ukrainian malware on our U.S. hosts. It just doesn't make sense. But in case we do, right, we built a detection rule for the IOCs that we knew, and we said, all right, we'll respond to it if it happens. So be aware, but don't overcommit, right? You just want to understand really what you're actually working with. Okay, hunt against the things that you actually have in your environment. I will tell you, one time I had a threat hunter who said, I am going to go hunt Exchange exploits in our environment. I was like, great, we have G Suite. Are you going to do the exploit yourself? Are you going to stand up a server? And so we had to have a conversation about like, dope, why, like, no shade, right? Why do you want to hunt it? Okay, so you saw this cool article and you saw that like 6 actors are using it right now for initial access. Awesome, you're on the right page about why we should be looking for this. We just don't have that technology. So go look at your technology stack. One thing that I would encourage you, observe from afar, but also talk to your business leaders. I will tell you the thing I do at the start of every year, I go to all of my business leaders that I know and I say, hey, I'm building out all of our threat hunts for the year. Is there something you want me to pick on to find bad things so that you can say, I told you so? And I'm not even joking you, people will set up meetings and talk to me for hours and they'll be ratting on their colleagues. Yeah, they'll be like, oh yeah, you know what? We're going to the cloud and we're spending $60 million to go to the cloud, but we don't have any logging in there. I'm like, oh, okay. Wouldn't it be a shame if I found some bad guys in there and said, hey, we need some tools or people? So this is a really, really nice way, number one, to get the business on your side, but number two, to actually hunt things that are really, really meaningful for your organization. Okay, so for VIPs, by the way, this is a Borat reference. I understand that I'm very old by saying King of the Castle. Know your high risk and high value items. This is people, assets, application, data, and processes. This is not just your servers that are high value, right? People can be high value too. If somebody's going after your CEO, like that's kind of a big deal, right? So document those. Also, high risk versus high value are two different things, right? High risk is maybe an application that has has been built using a lot of third-party libraries that you don't control the supply chain on. High values, your CEO's inbox, right? Not only will documenting these help you with your threat hunts, they will also help you with your IR people. Hopefully, someone else has done this work for you already. I really, really hope that, because this is kind of a basic thing that you should have in place already. If they haven't, work with some teams to do this. This should not solely be a threat hunting activity where you go and discover this, because there's so many people that benefit from this. One thing I'll say is when you're hunting your VIPs, we do 4 VIP hunts a year. We pick them, yeah. I'll talk about my threat hunting process, because it's a lot. We do 1 a quarter. We will go and talk to our CISO and our business leaders and say, okay, what is on your strategy to deliver in the next 3 quarters or the next 2 quarters ahead? And we're going to hunt a VIP thing based on that strategy. And I will tell you, nothing gets you more resources than saying you directly identified a targeted attack against your CFO. They're like, oh my God, cyber. Because the business leaders don't understand, right? You can be like, hey, I see somebody brute forcing your MFA prompts in order to get access into our environment. And they will be so terrified. They will be like, I'm going to write you a blank check. You can have whatever you want. How do we prevent this thing from happening? Because it matters to them more personally now. You're not just a random cost center that nobody understands, right? It's, there's an attack targeting you, the money guy. I'm here to help. Okay, so trends. Again, I said this is a little bit controversial. A lot of very purist threat hunters say do not go hunting in areas where your detection and response or your DNR people are already working, because that is known, right? And what I will tell you is where there's smoke, there's fire. So if there's a bunch of alerts coming out of one area of your business per month, there's probably going to be more that haven't been detected or alerted because you can't build them out yet. I encourage you to talk to your reactive teams. This is a perfect first place if you're trying to get into threat hunting. Go over and talk to them. One example, when I first started threat hunting, I sent a hunter over to talk to our IR team, and I said, hey, like, what's something that y'all are seeing that's really, really weird? And they're like, you know what, we're seeing a bunch of residential VPN logins to MFA. And we're like, oh, that's weird. You know, like NordVPN or ExpressVPN authenticating and signing in and MFAing. And so we went and looked, and I was like, you know what, why don't you just go hunt for residential VPN programs? That's a really nice and easy first hunt. I encourage anyone who's like, I'm trying to get into threat hunting, start with policy violations. Don't go looking for porn. Don't. Your legal team will thank you. Don't do it. Don't open that box. I'm telling you from experience. We had a butthole count for a year. Don't do it. Don't go look. Your lawyers do not want you to look. Look for stuff that is a technical policy violation. And so I sent this hunter over, and he went and looked for residential VPNs. And what do you know? We had 400 hosts using residential VPNs because they were trying to stream soccer or football or watch movies during their time. And what do you know? The residential VPNs took over our endpoint network tunneling software. So nothing was filtered. Everything was screwed. But this was a really, really good find. And we only found it by talking to our IR team and saying, like, what are you noticing weird? What's some patterns you've got? So you have the ability to improve the posture of your firm one hunt at a time. And you also get some really good karma because hopefully your SOC and IR teams will get a lot more sleep as you close these gaps. All right, so a few examples. I said I'm going to give you a bunch of examples. This is a real hunt in my organization. I know that we make local admin accounts. I know that we do it on endpoints. And so I went and looked for local admin accounts over 3 days. The red highlights, let me see if that shows up. Yeah, it does, thank God. It doesn't always show up because red doesn't look nice on presentations, but the red circles are spikes or changes in deviation of local admin account creations. And the very last spike, so I went and looked there, and you'll see that you've got like 40, 49, right? It's hovering there. That very last spike was a red team creating local admin accounts on a whole host of systems that they had access to that we didn't know. This was the only thing they had. It didn't create an alert, but it left an artifact, which means it was detectable, which means I could go find them. So it was technically unknown. Again, Windows environment, I know we use PSExec. I know threat actors use PSExec. It's a lot of fun, so I'm going to look for deviations in PSExec usage. PSExec is often used for lateral movement post-compromise. Once they're already in, they can navigate around your environment. The spike was actually nothing. It was kind of annoying, but this will kind of visualize what I'm looking for. It's those pattern deviations. One thing I'll tell you, if I was smart, which I am not always, I give you a red on that spike peak, right? I also want it in the dip at the very end. So not only are you looking for things that increase in volume, but sudden decrease in volume are also very, very telling. A lot of more advanced threat actors are going low and slow, right? So if I want to say, like, let me take out all the IT here and I was a threat actor, you might see a PSExec blip once every 6 to 8 hours, right? From a threat actor, because they don't want to get detected because they're bypassing anomaly filters on tool detections. So keep that in mind, both spikes and dips in activity for hunting. And PowerShell is being used for second stage downloads. Shocker. Thanks, Microsoft. This is a horrible search, but these searches, by the way, are on my GitHub, so you do not have to take notes. You can do this on your own. You can tweak it. But this is looking for someone using PowerShell to download. So you see I'm just going to come out here. This is fun. I'm going to use my hands. So here we're looking for PowerShell.exe, right? And then in the command line, download URL. It's got www, HTTP, HTTPS, blah, all that fun stuff that represents a URL. And you'll see in the red box highlighted, oh, it doesn't come through too great. Someone's downloading mimikatz.ps1 using PowerShell. So that's a lot of fun. You'll see a test too, that's me, right? And then a lot of chocolatey stuff. This is a really good one to find developers doing weird shit on. Not gonna lie. Like, tons of people have this built into their scripts to automate. Super annoying. Okay, resources. Let me see how much time we got. Oh, man, I'm doing pretty good. We got 20 minutes. All right, I'm going to give you this, and I'm going to tell you, before we get into talking about this, some guy came after me on Twitter for this slide, and he said, your hypotheses are inaccurate and not good, and I talked to people about it. Listen, these hypotheses, first of all, some are 7 years old, right? I've used these all in real life. All of them have found something. These are starting points. If you want to use them, awesome. Make them relevant for your organization. If you don't want to use them, that's okay. What I'll tell you is threat hunting hypotheses are very, very unique to organizations. They're very personal. Oftentimes there's a political reason behind why I did one of these. And that's okay. You don't have to use them. But what I'm trying to do is give you ideas for what hypotheses look like in the real world so that you can generate ideas and you can have something to kind of tweak your hypotheses against. So we're going to talk about a couple of these. So employees have committed sensitive information, including API keys, to public code repositories, forums, put internal data at risk. Developers are doing this constantly. You're going to find a ton of stuff if you go hunt for this. I'm talking like AWS API keys, admin credential pairs. Go on GitHub, run Trufflehog, use your company's name or use your company's main domain, and you are going to find something here all day, every day. This is a very real thing. I ran this in response to a developer who had committed a production AWS key to GitHub. And then we were like, well, we need to go find this elsewhere. And it found up a lot. Attackers have disabled Windows Defender and cleared Windows events to avoid detection. This is super real. Attackers do this all the time. They're trying to avoid you. Attackers are using simple text-only emails to avoid detection signatures and social engineer finance and HR employees. We see this a lot more frequently now. This is their first step to engage, especially with the advent of AI and deepfakes. And I know people are like, oh, deepfakes, that's nonsense. I'm here to tell you they are real. So the practical application in this, the attack chain, is attackers going to send a simple text email saying like, hey, Lauren, it's me, your CFO, Borat, right? Dope. Can you call me at this number? They will have you call you, or they'll say, can I call you on Zoom? Cool. So they'll do one of two. They'll call you on your phone, and they are using samples of your CEO's voice in his public speakings to generate audio clips. This is a thing. We've seen this in the wild. The second thing, if they Zoom you, what they will do is they will often patch in a YouTube video of a very public figure, normally your CEO, and they will cut it in and out to make it look like they're having connections issues with their webcams. And so that's their way of identifying themselves. And then they do the actual ask for payment or gift cards or whatever over the phone or on Zoom so that they're avoiding the detection filters on Proofpoint, Outlook, like whatever. So this is a very, very real thing. And it's super hard to detect. You kind of have to dream up a lot of keywords. It's also pretty hard to hunt unless you know what's common in your environment. So talk to your email folks, talk to your HR and finance people. It's always good that if you can go to like your SOC or someone and say, hey, what's the most recent phishing email reports? And get ideas from there. The last one I'll talk about is OS X, which is Mac endpoints being targeted for attacks due to their high-level users. Because, listen, executives just need PowerPoint and like email, right? So they want Macs. They want it to go fast. They want to look cool with all their peers. So we often see your first like 2 to 3 levels using Macs. And there's also differing security controls. Attacks that no longer easily work on Windows could work on Macs. And people take beef with this. They're like, oh, they're the same attacks that work on Windows can work on Macs. Great. What I'm implying here is that you've secured the two OSs differently. And that's very, very common. If you want to do the equivalent of GPO controls on a Mac, you need a tool called Jamf, right? That's another thing that you have to add to your budget. If you don't have money for that, it's not going to be as secure. So there are attacks that could work on Macs because you haven't closed the gaps equally in your Windows shops. There are things like this all over the place, right? Take out Macs, sub in FreeBSD as your OS. Oh, God, I hope you're not using that. I'm sorry if you are, or Oracle, or whatever, right? You could sub these in and out and find differences in your security controls between different OSs. Inevitably, it's going to happen, especially if you're with a large IT shop. Okay, so other hunt content. There is so much out there to help you. I mentioned MITRE ATT&CK. Go hit up MITRE ATT&CK. There's blogs, there's videos. They've got ATT&CKCon coming up this month that is virtual and free to attend. They've got so many ideas of how you can use ATT&CK, how people are using ATT&CK, what benefits ATT&CK can bring you. I'm starting to think ATT&CK's not a word anymore, so I'm going to stop saying it. But go use that resource. The threat hunting project on GitHub, also super, super helpful. Lots of documentation about threat hunting in general. The Threat Hunters Playbook is good if you've got an advanced team and you want to start doing some automation and technical stuff in threat hunting. I'm not there yet. Personally, I don't do that. But if that's something you're interested in, go for there. The Open Threat Research Threat Hunting Slack is dope. That is where people will share their hypotheses, talk about their threat hunts that they're doing, get ideas, communicate. This is one of many resources that I would recommend from like a Slack or Discord perspective. There's so many groups out there. My biggest superpower is learning how to talk to people and figuring out what cool stuff other people are doing so I can bring it back to my organization. And then lastly, Splunk just released their Peak framework, P-E-A-K. P-E-A-K? Wow, that was a doozy. Thank God this isn't recorded. Their Peak framework, woo, which is modernizing the threat hunting process. This follows a lot of my threat hunting process. And interestingly, my second in command who helped me start threat hunting at CenturyLink, Sydney Howard, she's gone over to Splunk and she's got a published blog in here. I'd highly recommend checking it out. It's very good. It's very scalable. Gets people really into that. Before I get into questions, what I'll tell you from our threat hunting process. So we use emulation in our threat hunting process. So ours is a little bit different. We operate on 6-week schedules. This gives a hunter enough time to, number one, do the bad thing to a gold image system, and then also learn how to detect and hunt that bad thing at scale. It also encompasses report writing and presenting. So we do things a little bit differently. Every single hunt has a full readout, has a full technical report, because that's been the best way that I've found for our management to like really get into it. I've seen a lot of folks who do 48-hour timelines for their hunts. That's completely acceptable as well. There's differences in each. You can do very, very quick hunts where you peel queries off of GitHub or off of Twitter and run them. The thing that I've found with that is oftentimes you're not going to find results because those queries are either so wide that they're not relevant to your organization, or they're not relevant to your organization because you don't have that particular log source readily available. And so I find a lot of people get really discouraged when they run like thousands of queries off GitHub and don't find anything, excuse me. And that's okay. I think that's a process that every threat hunter should go through, excuse me, and should try that first. But the reason we do emulation is so that we can make queries that are hyper relevant to our organization and what we actually have. On the bonus side, we also kind of get like a free purple team exercise out of it every time. So my threat hunters, like if they wanted to leave and go get their OSCP and go be a pen tester right after this, they could absolutely go do that. And our whole goal is to give them that space. I truly believe that if you want to be a better blue teamer, you need to spend some time red teaming. And similarly, if you want to be a better red teamer, you need to spend some time blue teaming. Okay, I removed the QR codes because a lot of people get really suspicious of QR codes for some reason. Shocker. GitHub, you can get all my slides there. LaurenProehl.com is my main website where I have some dumb bio that somebody wrote about me. I promise I don't take myself that seriously. And then Jontenviller on Twitter. Nobody knows how to pronounce it. It's the J1 and it says LP and it says a whole bunch of shenanigans. If you ever want to talk, find me on any one of those. Find me on LinkedIn. I love having conversations with people about threat hunting. I've built 5 programs now, 2 of which were threat hunting. So I'm happy to talk about building programs. Like if you're like, I want to do this, I'm happy to help you get into that. Love the flash, you should. Let me pose. Right? But yeah, there's so much we can talk about. So what I will do now is, let me see how much time we got. We got 10 minutes. Does anyone want to have any questions about this, first of all? And if no questions about this, is there any stuff you want to talk about threat hunting? The silence is deafening. All right. Okay. Well, I will wrap it up early. I'll give you 10 minutes back. And feel free to reach out. Happy to chat anytime. Thank you all. Appreciate it.